Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and your moderator, and I'm also the creator and the publisher of thechocolatelife.com. Today's episode, we're just a couple of days away, a week away from the solstice, and I thought it would be a good chance, summer solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, winter solstice down in the Southern Hemisphere, but I thought it would be a good idea to go and take a look back at the first 6 months of what's been going on in the world of chocolate. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm in a reflective kind of mood, thinking about a lot of stuff. And so this seemed to be a good way to get, for me, to help me wrap a handle on things. And I hope it will just something you'll also find interesting. I will remind everybody, go into the comments, the live chat on YouTube, the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook, and let me know where in the world you are connecting from. I'll get the shout out up on screen. And if you have a comment or a question about anything during the course of today's episode, I will also get that asked up on screen, and we'll see about answering it as well during the course of the hour. This is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com right now. You'll see that there's this, what we call the top rail is pinned images. And this is where you'll find many of the most recent posts. And you can see we have today's post up, it's here. And for every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, there is a post. And the post is going to provide an overview of what's the episode is about, links that you can get to if you want to watch the archive afterwards. And if you'd like, for every single episode, there's now a link to add a notification to a Google Calendar. So you will be reminded, in case for one reason or another, if you're not subscribed to the Pod Save Chocolate channel on YouTube, you can go there, subscribe to the channel, and then hit the notification bell to get every single notification so that you'll be notified that way. But this will put it on your Google Calendar. I have to think about how to put it in an iCal calendar. Let me know if you think that's interesting. If you'd like a more generic, can I add it to an Apple calendar? I need to think about how to add it to a Windows calendar. But if it's something that's interests you, let me know, and I will figure out and see if it is that I can do that for you. Another question, so let's just jump into today's topic with the year in review. It's episode 50. I thought that would be a nice big round number and a way to think about the year, in addition to it being the solstice next week. One of the things is it's always interesting to me when I look at the traffic to the Chocolate Life, what it is that people are reading. And in this particular case, for some reason, yesterday, I went from roughly 12 clicks a day or 12 visits a day to a page about Gatsby chocolate to over 100. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it's always interesting to me to think about it. If you'd like to go and do it, see this for yourself, you can go up into the search bar and then you just type in the word Gatsby, and it will get you review of assorted Gatsby chocolate so-called silence. So you can click on that and you can go to that episode. So quickest way to find it. I didn't add a link. I can add the link down here. So I'll make it easy for everybody to go and do that. But, I often wonder, what it is that people are reading, and more importantly, why it is that they're reading it. I'm not really entirely sure. Again, that's one of the things that got me to think about this week's episode. Give myself just this little pause and go through things. If you have a favorite episode, go into the comments and let me know what it is. And one of the things that this particular episode or this particular link, it came up in my email this morning. One of the things that this suggests to me is right now I am offering links to Pod Save Chocolate episodes on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. And the question is, and I'm asking you, and I will ask this on the LinkedIn and Facebook, about whether it makes sense to continue to do that. Right now, my viewership is split between YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and it makes sense to see about consolidating it into one platform. So have all of the views come from YouTube. But the question becomes, does everybody have a YouTube account? Because if you want to comment in the live stream, you have to have a YouTube account, and then comment afterwards. So it's an interesting question. What do you think? Go into the comments, let me know. If you're a Chocolate Life member, you can scroll down to the bottom of the screen and the member discussion. And I'm going to start adding that question into the member discussion. Should I consolidate all of my viewing to the one platform? To help grow the community. Is splitting it across 3 platforms good for me? Is it good for the community? I don't know the answer to that question. But if you've got an answer, or you've got an opinion, please let me know, and I will go and take a look at it. So let's think about it. So I started off because every year I do a looking back episode. So in December, I did a looking back. And again, this is post during the course of the year, have a chance to go and think about what it is that I've been talking about over the course of the last year. And then towards the end, looking at things which are going to be important topics for the coming year. So one of them, looking again, this is going back to December, one of the things that I thought would be important in 2024 is going to be the EUDR, so the European Deforestation Regulations, and the due diligence directive, which is I'm a part of that. Now, it seems that some of the hyperventilating, was the word I was searching for. Some of the hyperventilating around the EUDR appears to have calmed down. The EU has provided a little more clarity about what's going on, and so there is some feeling that the important players who need to be able to comply with EUDR are going to be able to comply with the directive between now and the end of the year, and we'll see what that means. But it appears that the sort of the existential panic about implementing programs which which comply with EUDR rules are in place. So the Corporate Transparency Act is not something that has received a whole lot of attention, and I'm I don't really understand why. It was a nothing burger in the first place, and I just overreacted to it. I'm going to be going and adding this, so trying to figure out what it is about the Corporate Transparency Act, what people think about it, and whether or not it's a big issue for people. So that's there. And then international cocoa diplomacy. So many people will know that last year, in October, I was in London for the annual meeting of International Cocoa Diplomacy, the International Chocolate and Cocoa Forum in London, and then I went to Nigeria in January. And it turns out that this is still a very, very interesting topic for me, what it is, the goals of international cocoa diplomacy, the approaches that I was working on with His Majesty. There seems to be some daylight that's growing between their timetable and some of their concerns, and what my timetable and some of my concerns are. And so I am continuing to work on um, on projects which are related to the goals of international cocoa diplomacy. It's specifically called something called the Specialty Chocolate and Cocoa Alliance International. And if you're interested in learning more, I will certainly let you know more about it. I'm in the process of sending out the position statement and starting to work on the business plan. It's a 501c3. It will be, that is intended to be a 501c3, which is aimed at promoting specialty chocolate. Now, you have to excuse me. For some reason, it's still allergy season here in Prescott, and I'm reacting to it. And so when I was thinking about 2024, for me, what I was thinking of was the EUDR, the Corporate Transparency Act, and international cocoa diplomacy are going to be things that are going to be, front and center. You notice that the rise in cocoa prices was not something that was on my radar at that time, which I think is, I think it's fair to say that cocoa prices has become the story, not just of 2024, but the story of the last 50 years. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the rest of the episode today. Um, so let's go back to today's post. And then, so we started off 2024 with Chocolate Life contributor Keith Ayub. Keith is a certified, he's a pediatric nutritionist. He's an emeritus at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City. And he has been my source for asking questions or getting answers to questions around heavy metals, lead and cadmium. And there are a bunch of articles about um, heavy metal contamination and what we need to do. How do we assess the hazards and the risks, and how do we treat them? Do we understand what the differences are between hazards and risk in those areas? And that's something we talked about in this first episode of the year, Chocolate in Your Health, the guide for 2024. If you are interested, you can go up to the top, click on the little magnifying glass, and just type in the word cadmium. And what you'll do is you'll find a bunch of the articles that Keith and I have collaborated on. The first 5 here: cadmium, lead post cadmium. We did an episode of the Chocolate Life Live featuring cadmium and the topics. And so these first articles are going to be, you don't even need to spell cadmium properly in order to get there, apparently, which is a good thing. So that's the way to go find out more about this. And this whole issue about heavy metals, it's one that continues to show up. If I'm in the r/chocolate subreddit, if I'm all over the internet, this notion of, oh my gosh, heavy metals contamination, as if it's something new, lead and cadmium, how do we do it? So this is a persistent topic which is coming up, and I'm going to put it in this sort of the internet urban legend category in terms of the importance that is taken on some people's mind, the people focusing on that one issue, lead and cadmium, and it being a primary indicator of whether or not, or a primary component of the purchase making decision. And I think that this is not something that's likely to go away anytime soon. It gained so much traction last year when it first came up, and that it's not going to go away. It's just out there when people search for health benefits of chocolate. Oh, that's an interesting thing. I was doing a little research. We'll get rid of this. Health benefits of chocolate. Right. Didn't think I would actually doing this each. So when we start looking at this, what we do is we find not only do we have this, we get these questions, is chocolate healthy? We'll find that many of these articles will mention heavy metals contamination, lead and cadmium. So it will, the results here will be dependent upon the search engine that you're using. This is DuckDuckGo, which I use. Google will bring different results. For some reason, it always thinks I'm in the United Kingdom. I'm not entirely certain why. That's not where my VPN is set. But this whole idea of the health benefits of cocoa and chocolate, and specifically the issues around heavy metals, is again an enduring. At this point, I believe we can chalk it up to be an urban legend. That the hazards and risks associated with it are ones that are easily managed, that we don't need to use cadmium levels or lead levels in chocolate as a screen for the purchase decisions we're making. Because if we did that, what we need to do is we need to say, okay, what are the heavy metals, cadmium and lead levels in spinach and in grains and pretty much almost everything that we don't seem to care about that in other foods in which we consume much larger quantity, of which we consume much larger quantities. But for some reason, we focused in on cocoa and chocolate. The reason why is that I think that people have much different emotional associations with cocoa and chocolate than they do with spinach or barley or wheat. And so it resonates with them in a way which is very, very different than for other foods. And it's one of the reasons why people will go and make these same sort of reports, analytical reports around things like baby food, because people have these emotional attachment to babies that they don't have with vegetables. And so it's important to know this one is not going away. And so it will be revisited in time and time and time again. So the next point I want to talk again, I went through all of the posts that I had done in 2024 on the chocolate life, and you can do that. All right, let's do this. So the particular browser that I'm using for one reason or another um, blocks a component of the chocolate life. And listen, if you have this problem, please let me know. If you've ever encountered this problem, please let me know. It appears to be I'm using a fork of Chrome, and there may be something in it that's keeping this in mind. But if you go to the home page, and then what you do is you click on Load More, what you can do is you can go and find all of the previous episodes, 16 at a time. And I just went back to the first post of 2024 and then said, what are the posts, what are the topics that seem to be of interest to me? What I've done, what do I think? In looking at them, they still strike me as being relevant, they still strike me as being interesting. And so I put them, I used them when I started thinking about what it was that I wanted to talk about today. Right. And so this one here, adding value to cocoa in producing countries. This is something that was a major topic when I was in Nigeria in January. We did a conference in Abuja and a conference in Lagos, and we spent part of both conferences um, really, really looking at um, whether you want to call it upcycling or some other aspect of cocoa. The question has always been, why not? The question has always been the question that people are looking at is, historically, when it comes to the cocoa and chocolate industries, our focus has been almost entirely on the beans. Whether fermented or unfermented, it has been on the beans. The cocoa pods have been left for the most part on the farm where they decompose. It's a part of the fertilization regimen in the farms. But we have ignored the fact that if I have 4 million metric tons dry of cocoa beans, it's about 10 million metric tons wet. If we just, to make the math easy, we say there's 100 liters of juice from every metric ton of beans. That number is maybe low, maybe high, but it's on average. Let's just use that number to make the math easy. So if we have 10 million times 100, it's like what? It's like it's over 1 billion liters of juice. Is it 10 billion? Maybe 10 billion liters of juice every year, and we just allow the vast majority of that to drain into the environment. On a smallholder farm, that there's not much of an impact. If I'm a very, very large centralized post-harvest processing facility, it becomes a real issue. That much sugar and that much acid dropped into the local ecosystem, especially if it goes into the local stream or other river, can have a really significant effect on wildlife, fish and other animals that are in the area. And so what could we do with that amount of what is normally considered to be a byproduct, a waste product of cacao post harvesting? Now, there are some people who have been looking at this at commercial scale. So we have the Swiss company Coa Pure, which showed up in Tuesday's episode, which was mentioned in Tuesday's episode. I worked on a project from 2011 through 2016, 2017, which is a distilled spirit made from the fresh juice that we collected in Peru and in Ecuador. There are people who are now taking the pulp, especially the extra pulp in CCN51, which easily contributes to over fermentation. They've been freeze drying it. There are people who've been using the pulp and doing things like boiling it down to create a syrup. If you add the placenta and cook the placenta, you can make a marmalade, a marmalada. There are not just a jalea, a jam. So there are many things that many things you can do with the pulp, right? And the juice. We've been also hearing very, very recently a lot more about using the endocarp, not just the husk entirely, but the endocarp, which is the inside of the outer shell, that pulpy, pithy part, the pithy part of the husk. If you can remove the outer shell from that, peel it, I suppose, in some way, then what you can do is if you um, dry it and then powder it, you can have a flour, and you can use that flour in many, many ways. Not only can you use it as a baking ingredient, right? You can use it as an ingredient in chocolate. There are some people about doing that. And as a matter of fact, this past Tuesday's episode, I mentioned at least two companies that are pursuing adding cocoa pod flour into bars of chocolate. I don't think legally they can be called chocolate. That's another issue. It's a regulatory issue, but it's a way to um, improve the nutritional content, maybe reduce the calorie content of a chocolate bar. The real question becomes about this. There are two, I think, and is those questions are: number one, is the farmer being paid any aspect of the upstream added value? So if the farmer is going to arrange to transport their pods to the central collection point, whether before or after the pods have been opened and the seeds have been removed, is the farmer being paid for that labor appropriately? And it's not clear in any of the reports that I've seen that I shared with you, in either of the projects that I shared with you earlier this week, that that is in fact the case. There's no indication whatsoever that the farmers are actually benefiting from upstream added value. And of course, that's absolutely necessary, right? If we're going to be adding more value upstream, and we're struggling with how to compensate farmers appropriately for the work that they do, then um, making them participants in all upstream added value opportunities seems to be just the right thing to do, right? It remains to be seen whether or not that will happen. The other thing we need to be very, very careful about when we remove pods from the farm is that, as I mentioned, they represent the nutritional or are part of the fertilizer. The decomposing of the pods on the farm is a major part of fertilization in many parts of the world. And if you remove the pods from the farm, you need to replace the nutritional value of the pods. And if you don't do that, you know, the farm is going to decay. All right, the productivity of the farm is going to be reduced more rapidly than it would be otherwise. And so you either need to pay the farmers for the fertilizer, which is going to replace the nutritional value of the pot, or otherwise compensate the farmers for it. And so this is, these are there are other things in this sort of upcycling, adding value in the producing country, not just at the farm level, right? But if we are in fact going to expand the transformation of cocoa beans into derivative and finished products in producing countries, one question is, how do we ensure that a lot of the, again, upstream added value in doing so actually goes to the country involved? So, for example, if I have um, a free trade zone, a zona franca, as you might say, in the Dominican Republic and other parts of the Spanish-speaking world, if there's a zona franca, there's a big one in Panama right by the canal. If the beans come off the boat in containers, they go into the zona franca, they are transformed into a finished product, and they leave. There may be some added value in the producing country, rent associated with the ground. You're paying for utilities, but perhaps at a reduced rate. There's going to be some labor and some employment taxes, perhaps, but there might not be any added value in terms of taxes on the import-export value of the cocoa beans. And so we need to be very careful about how we think about the way those businesses are structured and financed. If in fact we're delivering added value in the producing country, right, and not taking advantage of tax loopholes, right, or tax and other investment structures, which enable the people, again, upstream to be able to get a disproportionate share of the upstream added value. So that's, again, this is something that again, excuse me again. Um, even though I've taken an allergy medication, it hasn't worked. I'm not entirely certain why. Um, so this is something that I have been looking at. It's something that I brought to the fore in the first half of 2024, and the whole notion of upcycling and its potential impact are going to be things that I'm going to continue to talk about. An aspect of this going forward, before I move on to the next point, which I think is also very, very important, is that there are attempts around added value, right, which appear to be capable of reducing the demand, for cocoa beans, right? So, for example, there is a report, a company called Circe Bioscience, which is commercializing a technology developed at Harvard University that is capable of producing a fat that is chemically very similar to cocoa butter from just electricity and CO2 from the atmosphere using genetically modified organisms. So using a form of precision fermentation, if you'd like. Well, right now, anybody who's in the chocolate business will tell you that the cost of cocoa butter has just risen astronomically. And so, why are we using this fat component, this new technology, right, in cocoa butter, right, when cocoa corresponds to about 6% globally of new deforestation, whereas palm oil and soybean production accounts for 2/3 of all new global deforestation. And so, shouldn't we be focusing this technology on perhaps saying reducing reducing replace using cocoa butter to replace, um, creating a cocoa butter replacement for pharmaceutical applications, which don't require expensive chemical deodorization, right? For example, because we can create it odor free in the lab, or to replace the use of fats in like compound chocolate, for example. Right. So it's an interesting question, and it's one that, when it comes to ethics and morals around the ethical and sustainable sourcing of cocoa, that I think are really, really important to discuss. Right. One thing that I've been doing more and more of, and I took a look at this and I'm sort of surprised. It surprised myself at the number of these that I've done, is this series of interviews and tastings with chocolate makers. So if you are a chocolate maker or a confectioner, right, and you would like to have an episode of Pod Save Chocolate, which is dedicated to the first half of it, your business, your history, your inspiration, what gets you out of bed this morning, all those kinds of things, and that would be followed by a tasting, then reach out to me. I will. I haven't done it, but you can send an email to member.support@thechocolatelife.com. That'll get to me and say, I'd like to have an interview and tasting episode of Pod Save Chocolate. And that doesn't matter whether you're locally to me here in the Southwest United States. You can see that Elmer Perneda is from Honduras. Just let me know and send the work to me, and we can arrange to get an episode that makes sense to me. Right now it's 90 some odd degrees for people who are not who use the centigrade, like 33, 34, 35 degrees every day, so it's a little challenging on the shipping, but I'm happy to do this. It's one of my favorite episode formats. I would just really love to do it, and I'm really looking forward to doing many, 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 many more of them. um, when we talk about, I'll go and take a look at this. I gave in 2023, October of 2023, a talk to the British Society of Flavorists. I did this remotely. They were in the Como district, the Lake District of Italy, and I was, here in Arizona, um, and but about communicating the flavors of chocolate and coffee. And for me, language is really, really important. And if you're at all spending time on the chocolate life and Pod Safe Chocolate, this is something that I've written about, something I've talked about a lot. Right. And this particular episode was looking at the differences in language between professionals and consumers. That the language that professional uses can be different. It can be more technical. It can be one that requires a great deal more understanding. And we can use different visualizations to be able to talk to each other about flavor. But when it comes to the general public, we need something which is simpler to decode, simpler to understand. And that there are analogies between communicating about the flavor of coffee and communicating about the flavor of chocolate. But for example, there's no fat component when it comes to coffee. And so we think about texture in coffee and chocolate very differently. And so this is really, really fascinating topic for me. Um, I gave an overview of the entire thing here. And this is one of my all-time influences. I mean, it's the first book as a graduate of the program at the Rhode Island School of Design. This is the first book that I looked at, which really pointed home to me how visualizations can, on purpose and inadvertently, be used to misconstrue information. Right? So, if you're at all interested in the topic of visualizations, I would start off with, colloquially, we just call it VDQI, the visual display of quantitative information by Edward Tufte, and a shout out to his wife, who is really, really important in all of his works. And then his subsequent books. If you've got VDQI, go through the chronology of Tufte's publications on this, and it's just really, really fabulous, and it's really, really cool. And it is okay. How do we go talk about it? So this is most of the slides from the presentation that I gave, and you'll be able to go through and have develop some ideas for yourself about how you want to talk about it. And I would be very interested. If you are a member of the Chocolate Life, there's always a free membership. If you're interested, you just go in here, and rather than clicking on, it will say join if you're not logged in. If you're not a member, just click on join. There's always a free tier. And this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, as all episodes of Pod Safe Chocolate are supported by members of the Chocolate Life. It's a way that you can go and help support the work that I do directly, not just indirectly, by watching these episodes. So this is a fun one for me. I think it's really, really important. And this coming October, I am going to be in Brussels physically um, on Friday the 25th, where I will be giving a presentation about um, quantifying the flavor of cocoa and chocolate. So with my colleague Zoe Papalexandratu, with whom I worked in Nicaragua and Mexico on a couple of projects, we're going to be talking about how we take quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, right? So organoleptic analysis of cocoa and chocolate, and how would professionals, people in the flavorist industry, people who are involved in developing new products using flavors, what would that look like to them? How are we going to be able to take advantage of some of these new technologies and this understanding that we've got in order to be able to move forward in developing new products? It's going to be fascinated. As a part of that, I just want to let everybody know, because I'm going to be there, because I'm going to be in the EU around that time, I'm looking forward to being in Paris for the Salon du Chocolat the next week. If you're interested, I'm going to be doing a 3-day tour of the salon. It's going to be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So the 30th, the 31st, and the 1st. The 30th is going to be spent all day at the salon. The cost of the tour is going to include admission to the salon, and then I'm organizing some very, very special events. So people who will be part of the tour will be able to participate in things in and around the salon, and people who are coming to the salon for a very, very special, some very, very special events. If you're interested, send me a message, member.support@thechocolatelife.com, and we can go talk about that. So communicating the flavors, big thing for me. I also got a chance to talk to a colleague of mine. I've known Volker Lehmann, who is the founder, the owner of the Hacienda Tranquilidad in Bolivia. I've known Volker for at least 15 years now. I went to, it's much longer than that now, maybe 18 years now. And I had an opportunity to visit him twice in 2010 in Bolivia, once in January and once in November. And if you are interested, we are working on organizing a tour to Bolivia in 2025. January is when we're currently thinking about doing it. If you're interested in joining me and joining Volker, on a trip learning about cacao in Bolivia, send me an email, member.support@thechocolate.com, and say, I'd like to be on the notification list. We plan to start in La Paz. Then we're going to go into the um, the South Yungas along the Beni River. It's still the same department that La Paz is in, and we're going to be looking at cacao, which comes from the Alto Beni. Then we're going to be going to the Hacienda Tranquilidad, which is in the Itenes region of the Beni department, and spend some time on the hacienda, where you'll get an opportunity to participate in activities associated with collecting cacao, post-harvest processing, all those kinds of stuff. It's going to be an in-depth week on the ground exploration of cacao, and that's going to be in early 2025. So I've got this travel component to the salon in Paris in October, towards the end of October. I've got this coming on in 2025. I'm also working on a trip to Ecuador, two of them actually, one of which might be sort of mid-November. So after the salon in New York, but before Thanksgiving is what we're thinking about this year. And then also something at this time next year in Ecuador. And again, if you're interested in either of those opportunities, right, member.support@thechocolatelife.com, and we'll make sure you get all the information you need for doing that. One of the things that I love to do as here on the Chocolate Life is go and take a look at the way other people are talking about specialty cocoa and craft chocolate and things like that. I just in my feed one morning, it was like YouTube, I was scrolling, and America's Test Kitchen, right, was doing an episode on single origin chocolate. And so I went and deconstructed the episode, playing very, very short clips, and then doing responses to the very, very short clips. It turns out that, it's not just confirmation bias. It's a different, but I think related phenomenon, which is we tend to look at outlets like America's Test Kitchen, and this just happens to be the one that I also did this with an episode of This Week with John Oliver, where he was talking about deforestation and Tony's Chocolonely, and I'm going, when we have some source that we consider to be trusted talking about something, we tend to accept what it is that they're saying at face value without questioning it until we get to an episode in which we as the viewer have a lot of subject matter expertise. And then we can look and go, oh my gosh, they actually don't have a complete view, or they're not communicating a complete view. And those are two different things. It's, are they mistaken? Are they misled? That's different from lying, which is deliberately saying things not to be true. Right? But they may just have an incomplete understanding. And what they're doing is they're communicating that incomplete understanding. And the outlet is so trusted that all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of people who are saying, well, Jack on ATK said blah, 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 and it turns out not to be true. Right? So if you have a trusted source, and I've asked this question of people here on the Chocolate Life, they're not really interested in response videos, but if you are interested in response videos, let me know. Go into the comments on today's post, send me a message on member.support@thechocolatelife.com. Just let me know what you think, and I will add it to the list of topics for futures episodes. This was very interesting to me. Again, now that I'm looking at product reviews of any kind at ATK, I look at them differently. I take them with big heapings of salt, because I now understand, because of the way they talked about single origin chocolates, that their understanding may be incomplete. We need to more critically assess what it is that they say. In general, I think that's a really good thing. Being a more critical viewer or consumer of information, not necessarily skeptical, but more critical, right, is an important aspect of living in this information-dense, information-rich society, in which it's easy, because of how much information we are bombarded by and with, to be overloaded by it and start tuning out, right? It's an issue when it comes to, abdicating our personal understanding to the crowd. It's like if I go to Yelp and there's a 5-star review and there are hundreds of 5-star reviews for a particular perhaps restaurant or a particular dish at a restaurant, I go to the restaurant, I have that dish, and I go, I'm not impressed, and thinking, well, it must be something wrong with me, rather than thinking, well, maybe the kitchen had an off night, maybe it's just not for me, right? And that's okay, right? But it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And we need to be, I think, if we're more skeptical, more careful, more critical, I think maybe a better word than skeptical, more critical consumers of information, we can set expectations appropriately about the kind of confidence that we put in the sources that we consume on a regular basis, and not just ones that create a bubble and that are support our own ideas of confirmation bias, but that you can look at all these things and assess them, assess them critically. And I think that's important. And that's a lesson that I got from this episode of America's Test Kitchen. And it's something that I'm going to continue to do because I think it's critically important that we be better consumers of information. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why I do PodSafe Chocolate. I mean, I am looking to present my understanding of things to you, and I'm looking for pushback. I'm looking for saying, hey, Clay, you are out of line. It's one of the reasons why I contribute to the r/chocolate subreddit. It's place in social media where I'm probably more active than any other location. And so if you're interested in following along there, go to Reddit and subscribe to the r/chocolate subreddit. It's one of only 2 subs that I contribute to on a regular basis. So just that. So this post here, right? So mapping the genetic evolution of cacao. Um, when my book was published in 2007, so it was mid-October of 2007, there was the typical triune understanding of cacao, right? So we triune plus one. So we have Criollo Forastero and Trinitario, and then Nacional, and then like 6 months later, Juan Carlos Motomor and his team dropped their genetic research and says there's not 3 varieties, there's actually 10, right? And since then, we've added a couple of more to that 10, and our understanding of the genetics of cacao have continuously improved. Right. And I was trying to write an evergreen book in Discover Chocolate, and I wasn't expecting that one aspect of what I thought was promoting as correct information would be overturned so quickly. Right. So there. So following this along, where did cacao come from? Right. And who were the first, where is the first archaeological evidence to support the use and domestication of cacao? Became really, really important to me to follow along. And there was this fabulous article, right? It first came to me, right, through a subscription to a news service called Ground News. And here is the listing on Ground News, and that's followed by it showing. So there's a link from Ground News to this Ancient Origins publication, which then led me through 3 further research to this article in Nature from Claire Lano about this particular topic. And that reminded me that in 2022, and actually here's a link to the original article on Plus One, the original Motomayor article. So if you want to close the loop yourself, you possibly can. But I was also back in, when I was in Ecuador in 2022, I had a chance to sit through a presentation by a professor, so Francisco Valdez, who was mentioned in this particular research study, the use and domestication of Theobroma cacao, and also this new report from Nature, Claire Lano, in terms of understanding. So it's just, where cacao, it's an interesting, your question. I mean, one of the questions which is not answered in this, but it's because I'm living in the Southwest at the moment. I know that cacao was traded all the way up into northern New Mexico, so Chaco Canyon, before the arrival of Europeans, and that makes me wonder if there was any kind of back and forth communication between sort of tribal shamans, medicine men, healers um, in the Southwest, if there was any cross-pollination of ideas between tribes on the East Coast of the United States and the tribes out here, and whether or not there might be any archaeological evidence predating the arrival of Europeans of cocoa on the East Coast. That would be very, very cool. I don't know the answer to that question, but this continued understanding. So here, yeah, Dr. Francisco Valdez, Francisco Valdez was the presenter. It was just really, really fascinating, and as someone who is a communicator around cocoa and chocolate, better understanding the origin of cacao, the origin of chocolate, is really, really important to me, to be able to tell the stories, to say that yes, while Criollo and Forastero and Trinitario represented our understanding, it's a limited understanding. It's also a linguistic understanding. These are words which were applied by Spanish conquerors. They were not the words that were used by the peoples who were here prior to the conquest. So it's important to know all of those things, I think, in looking at it. Man, well, we're getting close, and we're getting done. So I have been a big advocate of reading very, very closely annual reports and looking through things like ethical buying guides. And one of them is the chocolate scorecard, and particularly the 2024 chocolate scorecard. And this particular episode is literally a page by page, step by step critical deconstruction of what the scorecard does and does not say, and if it in fact is a good representation of the research, and what does in fact the research say about things. So I would go take a look at that if you're at all interested in these topics. This is a huge thing that I worked on. Excuse me, the wicked bad and the wicked good list. Some people said that I used the phrase the black list, and that was racist language. So I changed it to wicked good, wicked bad list, because wicked has both. I can say wicked good and wicked bad, and people will know what I mean when I say that. And then I've also done a deconstruction of the 2023 chocolate scorecard. Again, the idea being here, right? And here's a PDF of the 2023 scorecard. They're no longer publishing PDFs of the scorecard, which I think is a huge mistake. I think it's a deliberate choice that they made, and what it does is it makes it much, much harder to be able to compare the results in the 2024 scorecard with the 2023 and previous scorecards. And there's links to 2020. So all of the scorecards, the previous scorecards, are linked to 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is the 20. So links to all the scorecards are here. Because 2024 is the 5th edition. So go take a look at this if you're all interested in the question of greenwashing, right? Whether, again, are they deliberately greenwashing? I don't know the answer. I'm not trying to ascribe motivation. I'm just looking at the information they present and how they present it. And I'm going, this is at best an attempt to maintain the status quo. And maintaining the status quo is a really, really bad thing as we look at responses to unethical behavior in the cocoa supply chain. So if we are all worried about Big Chocolate's abuse of people, labor, if we're at all interested in or worried about the abuse of the environment by Big Chocolate, if we're all worried about the abuse of the health of billions of people through providing products that are large quantities of sugar in a form that's designed to be moreish, right? I want more. Then you look at this and you go, okay, there's some greenwashing going on here. The question is it deliberate or not? I don't know, right? But we need to have critical faculties to be able to look through the information that is being presented and the way the information is being presented in order to be able to be more critical consumers of it. What are they saying? Is there any misdirection here? Again, advertent or inadvertent misdirection here. And so this is something that I will continue to do. It's important to me, and I hope it's important to you. Again, if you're watching, go into the comments. Let me know where in the world you're connecting from, right, in the last 10 minutes. And if this kinds of topics are of interest to you, I will continue to um, go write about them and cover them, because I think it's really, really, really important. It does not make big chocolate like me necessarily, which is a challenge um, for me, because it makes it harder for me to get some forms of information. But still, I think that having pushing back on the top line narratives that these companies are doing is really, really important. And I'm going to jump in here and say, this coming Sunday, which is the 23rd, no, it's a week from Sunday. So this coming Sunday is Father's Day here in the United States, the 16th. So I've pushed the monthly members call to the 23rd, right? And I am going to be in the final stages of producing my art, the manuscript for my article for International Confectionery for the June-July issue. And that the topic of that article, the feature focus of the article, is on ethical sourcing. And so the members call on the 23rd for everybody who's going to be on the members call. If you're not currently a member, just go join. And then there is, go look at the current member newsletter, the June member newsletter. So if you're not a member, click join up here. And once you're a member, free member, premium member, either one, once you've done that, you will be able to get to the June 2024 member newsletter. And when you do that, you'll find, oh my gosh, there are the links for the members call, right? And you'll be able to join. It's at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning here in Arizona, which means Pacific Daylight Time, which is the same as Mountain Standard Time. And we'll be talking about the article on ethical cacao sourcing. And you'll have an opportunity to respond, to the language that I use, the thoughts that I present, and things like that, and help shape the way that article, the article which is submitted. I have like 3 days before it needs to get submitted, is going to look. So, please, a reason to become a member if you're interested. And I'm going to move on to the next thing. So many of you will know that I was a presenter at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival. It's in Albuquerque in April. I did an episode of Pod Save Chocolate with Dean, who is the owner of the company, one of the owners of the company that organized the fest. And then I did a post-show review, and that's this travelogue and report. I mean, I love going to chocolate festivals. I love presenting at chocolate festivals. I love the questions that people ask when I sit in an audience and share what it is that I know with them. It helps me be a better communicator. And by having to interact with my audience in real time, I make somebody raises their hands immediately and says, that's not clear to me. And I have to find another way to say it. Now, often, one of the things I learned very early on in my tech career is it's important to be able to have 3 or 4 ways to describe the same concept, most concepts, right, for different audiences at different levels of understanding and different levels of technical sophistication. And so getting out in front of, this was 4 audiences, each with 36 people over the course of 2 days, like 144, 145 people, children in the audience, small children. It was just a really, really fun opportunity. I would like to do a lot more of it. So if you're running a chocolate festival and you want somebody to do it, give me a call, member.support@thechocolatelife.com, and let me know. I am hoping to be a part of the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival at the end of November. It's going to be in Rushville, Indiana. It's organized by Dustin Cornett, who is the organizer of the Craft Chocolate Challenge. So I'm hoping to be there. I'm hoping to see any of you who will be there in November. We're having an organizational call in the coming week, which is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. And, I'm looking, every opportunity to go and present. It's going to be looking forward to it because I enjoy it. Right. It's, I don't always get a lot of pushback, a lot of commentary doing these episodes. And so doing them live is a very, very different experience and one. I think is really, really important. So these last two posts, and actually there's a link to a third. So the high cost of expensive cocoa, part one and part two, and this episode on, which was very, very recently, on cocoa carbon capture and biochar, is what I'm going to end with today. The big story of 2024, and actually this story started in 2023, right, is the increase in the price of cocoa. So this is something that I talk about, on a regular basis. So here's, I have a link to market prices. Um, I just reloaded it. This is yesterday. This was cash. So let me reload this. Nope. So yesterday's price, we saw that yesterday's price had gone up all the way to $10,500 a metric ton. It had fallen as low as $7,200 a metric ton within the last month. It's here somewhere. If we look at just barely a month ago, the price was, 6 weeks ago. Now the price was at $12,250 a metric ton. We look at over here, what we look at historical high. The 52-week high is 12,250. The 52-week low is 3,123. And the question is, what caused the price spike, right? And why did it go from 12,000 on April 19th, right, which was the high? Why did it stop there, right? So 12,250. Why did it hit this high and why did it stop there? And what are the mechanisms that led to this price drop? As low as 71.66 within a month, and then really, really massive jump over the course of one day, with a very, very slow decay, and then since the end of May, just this really, really strong rebound in terms of the price, and is in fact they're going to be a top, right? This is the question. This is the story, right, for 2024 and for the past 20 years, and maybe even the past 50 years. This $12,000 price that we're talking about here on the 19th of May, this represents the highest price achieved on the market in what are called constant dollar terms, right? Adjusted for inflation, the high price back in the late 1970s is higher than this $12,000 amount, right? And what led to it? I mean, there are a bunch of factors that led to it. The primary factors that led to it were, one, uncertainty over the course of the EUDR, what it was going to meet. Number two, um, bad weather, probably exacerbated by climate change and an uncertain El Nino, which apparently the season ended in the last couple of days. So the El Nino season is technically past at the moment, right? But this weather changed rain patterns. So there wasn't as much rain in some places. There's too much rain in others. They're talking about an increase in diseases, right, associated with pods and trees, which reduce the harvest. In Ghana, there was some concern over what's called artisan gold mining, right? And then this is why the price reached the price that it did, right? And then it hit this 12,250 price because by the time it got here, there just wasn't any more cocoa to buy, right? No matter what money you threw at somebody, it's like, we don't have any stocks. We got no more to sell. You can't give us a lot more because we just don't have any. And that's maybe one of the factors which contributed to the high reaching what it did and not going beyond. And then the question is, what's behind the softening of prices? And my theory here, right, and it seems to be borne out by conversations with other people, is that there was an expectation that the mid-harvest, which is going on right now in the Ivory Coast and Ghana, would return to normal levels or more normal levels. And so there would be a strengthening of supply, and that would ease the upward price motivations on the demand side of things. Right? And it turns out that we're looking at this price go down. And then within the last couple of weeks, what people realized is, oh my gosh, the mid-harvest is not as strong as people had forecasted to be. And by forecast, I mean put their thumb up and said, the wind here, and said, "Hmm, we're hoping that the prices will return, or that the productivity will return to something more like normal." So there was no fundamental change, right? It was just hope that the harvest would get better, or would be better. And it turns out that the harvest wasn't at the levels that most people had anticipated, forecast, hoped, wished for, pulled out of their backsides, however they do what it is that they do. Um, and I believe that the increase in price since the 1st of June, so the first trading day of June would have been a Monday, so $9,451 a ton on the 3rd of June. Is that true? Anyway, and then it's gone up another $1,100 in the last 10 days, $1,100 a ton in the next 10 days. And I believe that's because people fundamentally misunderstood what was going to happen with the mid harvest, or misunderstood. They had un, hopes that were not founded in reality. They were just hopes, right? That things would get better. And I think much more fundamentally, and this is the thing that the thing that I am going to be looking at when I look at my ethical sourcing article. Number one is there a difference between ethical behavior and moral behavior, or unethical behavior and immoral behavior? That's an interest, because if we're going to talk about ethical cacao sourcing, the first place to start is, what do we mean when we use the word ethical? And this is interesting for me because I went back and looked at my history, and it turns out the first ever article that I wrote for International Confectionery as technical editor was for the June-July issue, and it was around defining what sustainability meant, right? And how do we use sustainability in the United States, and what do we mean when we use it, as opposed to perhaps people in Europe? What do they mean when they use the word sustainability? And it turns out it's different things. And if you message around sustainability to one audience using language that is, understood by another audience, you're just talking past each other, right? So it's really, really important, again, around communicating flavor and things like that, to get basic definitions down and what that means, right? And so again, I'm going to be talking about this on the Sunday 23rd members AMA. If you want to join, I'd love to have your thoughts on that, because I will be in the final stages of working on the manuscript for the International Confectionery article. So I'm looking forward to that. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me here today, for whether it was a minute, whether it was half an hour, whether it was for the entire episode, whether on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Please let me know in the comments, right, what you think about any of what it is that I talked about. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the Pod Save Chocolate channel. And I think also importantly, this is something I'm going to ask in the next week, whether you think it makes sense for me to continue to stream to 3 different platforms, right? Can I stream just to YouTube, which I think is a sort of a common denominator platform for everything, and put the links to the YouTube stream on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and just click through? No different from when you're doing now. You just, but if you want to comment, you need to have a YouTube account. So just let me know if you think that's the way I'm leaning. By the way, I may just try that for the month of July, and we'll see how that goes. And also, to let you know, have you let me know your thoughts about doing, where you want to see the episodes of Pod Safe Chocolate on an audio podcasting platform, because that's something I'm going to be working on over the next week, is uploading episodes and seeing what people think about them. And with that, I am at the end of today's episode. Click on the join link. I know it says account here, but click on the join link and become a member of the Chocolate Life. There's always a free member, and every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate is supported by the members of the Chocolate Life. You are the reason why I do this. It is your support and your contributions of support which make it possible for me to continue the work that I have been doing for the past 20 years and hope to do for another 20. And with that, everybody, listen, have a great weekend. If you're in the United States and you're going to be celebrating Father's Day this weekend. Have a fabulous Father's Day weekend with family. I hope you're celebrating it with chocolate, in whole or in part. And remember, as I end, that if you're working with chocolate and you are not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody, ciao and enjoy.